What's up, guys? Dalmat here. So, the highly anticipated Deedlit in Wonder Labyrinth is set to drop on every gaming console tomorrow, December the 16th. And with its beautiful graphics, amazing character design, fluid combat and controls, a very cleverly designed elemental system which draws from games like Ikaruga, and a grand soundtrack, this is one of the best Metroidvanias I've played in my life. And before we get to it, I have a Patreon and a Buy Me a Coffee system so you can support me in making more videos like this. I'll be leaving the links in the description. So, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I give you Deedlit in Wonder Labyrinth. Heavily inspired by Castlevania Symphony of the Night and developed by Team Ladybug under the supervision of Ryo Mizuno, Record of Lodoss War's author himself, this elegant game was released on March the 14th, 2020 as an early access title on Steam. And even though I stayed away from it for the sole reason that I did not trust early access games, I was eager to play it. Great Metroidvanias don't come by very often, and man oh man did this game look promising. So when it dropped, you can bet your ass I bought it. And Deedlit in Wonder Labyrinth draws heavily from its source material, being a complete fantasy adventure game. Among many enemies you'll fight goblins, lizardmen, trolls, mummies, wizards, and of course, big ass dragons, which are some of the funnest bosses I've ever faced in a game, by the way. But we'll get to them later. And of course, being a Metroidvania inspired by the 1997 smash hit Symphony of the Night, you have many different weapons to choose from, and all of them have beautifully drawn animations. However, the creature exceeded its master in one key aspect. Now, you can move while you attack, and this applies to every single weapon. But hey, it doesn't stop there. You can attack in every single direction with weapons other than greatswords. And this is furthered by the elemental system, which we'll get to in a moment. So, from a simple mace to a greatsword, all of your attacks are very fluid and nimble, just like a high elf would be. Yes, I'm talking about Deedlit, one of the leading characters in this classic 90s fantasy anime and our protagonist. Still on the gameplay department, every single weapon is very easy to use. This is no Dark Souls, so for example, whenever you decide to go with a greatsword, you won't have to worry that much about anticipating your attacks due to a slow startup animation. And yes, there's a type of weapon for each situation and player. And speaking of weapons, I have a special video showing you how to get the Soul Cruncher, a very powerful weapon pretty early into the game. There's some fun fourth wall breaking in the process of acquiring it, and I'll leave the link for it in the card right now, as well as displayed in the recommended videos at the end of this review. So you know, you don't go anywhere and keep on watching. But listen, it's hard to think about elves without thinking about bows, right? They go hand in hand. And don't worry, Deedlit's got you covered, and I really like what they've done with this game. Our beautiful high elf has a free type of aiming with our many bows. You can fire at very high and low angles, and if you quickly tap the arrow button after the first shot, you maintain the angle of your barrage of arrows while still being able to advance or retreat. And this will come in handy during some bosses, so make sure to master this. And still on the equipment department, there are two basic stats that govern your weapons: attack speed and damage. So make sure to consider those aspects when choosing your loadout. And you also have very different spells to aid you in your battle, such as the Energy Burst, the Typhoon, and the Energy Rain. They're all powerful and useful in different situations, and while still on the magic subject, let's talk elements, one of the game's quintessential aspects. You find both a fire and a wind spirit pretty early on. Whatever spirit you have will imbue your weapon with its element, and enemies all have different resistance to them, going from extremely vulnerable to impervious. But that's not really what caught my eye. What's really interesting here is the elemental absorption system. You can absorb fire and wind attacks as long as you have the corresponding element equipped. And the cool thing is, this will fill up your MP bar. Now granted, you do have a shop where you can buy MP potions and other trinkets among many great weapons, but it's best to learn to make good use of this system and save your money for more important stuff. And hey, remember how I told you that your attacks are furthered by your elemental powers? You see, upon equipping the wind element, you can hover and attack in all 8 directions. Hold down the L1 button, and Deedlit will lock herself in place, allowing you to attack in any direction without moving. And the same goes for the bow, albeit with minor differences. But there's still more. See those numbers over your elemental sphere? Those are highly important too, and for a couple of reasons. They tell you which level your elements are at, and they work independently from one another. The higher the level, the bigger the damage. But there's an awesome catch here. Whenever you equip an element that's at level 3, your health begins regenerating. However, your level will go down by 1 once you get hit, so manage your gauges accordingly. And remember, those are independent from one another, so that also goes for the damage you take. And you also have familiars to fight alongside you. Once you pick up their power-ups, they'll begin dealing more damage. When you put all of those aspects together, Deedlit in Wonder Labyrinth manages to deliver a very streamlined, elegant, and functional experience. And oh yeah, you can also backdash and perform a slide, which, when done with the fire element, makes Deedlit go full Kami with the added bonus of having mad iframes. And make sure to remember this technique because it will be vital during one very specific boss fight. And as a matter of fact, I have a video where I show you how to defeat every single boss in this game. Check the card that's on screen. And now let's talk eye candy. And brother, this game has a lot of it. You know, I just reviewed Blasphemous a few days ago in anticipation for the Stellar Wounds of Eventide DLC, which I have live streamed in its entirety. And don't worry, I'll leave both videos at the end of this review. To me, Blasphemous is the undisputed king in terms of pixel art. Seriously, some areas are so beautiful and detailed they're ridiculous. And I'll ask you guys the same question I asked in my Blasphemous review. Can you think of a prettier 2D game? Because I really want to know, and you can be sure that I'll check out your suggestion. And if it's an interesting game, perhaps I'll even review it. So fire away! So even though to me Blasphemous is the king of 2D pixel art, Deedlit in Wonder Labyrinth is nothing to scoff at. Each area has vibrant colors and sets the tone quite well. And listen, I don't like throwing the price tag when reviewing a more affordable game because doing so seems to carry the stigma of, defending a shitty game. But for $20, what we got here is more than generous. And to further elucidate this, let's talk enemies and bosses. Every area has very distinct enemies, each with their unique attacks, and I value that. Copy-paste enemies are an absolute disrespect for the consumer's intelligence, and being on the lookout for new enemies whenever I start a new stage was never disappointing. As a matter of fact, we're gonna discuss what Deedlit in Wonder Labyrinth means for the gaming world in just a few moments, so keep watching. This game has done more than you think, and if you think about it, each stage almost seems like an anime episode. And this is felt at greater length by the cutscenes you get before every boss. There's always a small exchange between Deedlit and other characters from the series. Now granted, they could have been a little bit longer, but this isn't demeaning enough to detract points from this masterpiece. And now, speaking about bosses, I'm gonna let you guys in on a little secret. I largely gauge a Metroidvania by looking at its bosses. This type of enemy is not only a test to the player's mettle up to that point, but also to the developer's effort and creativity in making interesting and balanced fights no matter how hard they get. You brave an entire stage and your reward for it is an enemy you can bork your way to victory. Come on! And let me tell you right now, Deedlit in Wonder Labyrinth doesn't have a single boss that feels like a waste of time or some sort of dumb fight. No sir, all bosses demanded more than what I could initially give and immediately adapt to during the first match, requiring me, to do fights a few times. And after fighting Crisanta, that anime bitch, and defeating her, my tolerance to defeat has dramatically improved. But a word of advice though, watch out for the second fight against Pirates. I'm not gonna spoil how to survive her assault, but here's a hint. A couple of minutes ago, I mentioned a very important technique in this review. If you can find out what it is, then you'll be able to even the playing field. And speaking about evening the playing field, even when you figure out the boss's strats, there's still very entertaining fight. And good thing the developers got onto this because in its latest PC update, we got a boss rush mode. And if you're anything like me, you love a tough and fair fight. My favorite boss? The Black Dragon, of course. He's one mean son of a gun. And after you're done with all of this game's glorious entertainment, besides the aforementioned boss rush mode, you get a customizable new game experience. It's not exactly a new game plus per se. Let me explain. You'll be presented with buffs and nerfs before you start your second round. All weapons, every single spell, fixed level 1 for all you Classicvania purists out there, fixed 1 HP, and also fixed spirit level. And the best part, you can pick and choose which one of those buffs or perks you're gonna activate on your playthrough. And I love when developers implement this type of thing. It's a no-brainer, easy to implement, and adds replay value. You can bet I'll be doing some streams with some of those enabled. And now let's discuss what Deedlit in Wonder Labyrinth represents for the gaming world. Even though this isn't a AAA title for the $20 it costs, it more than delivers an amazing and satisfying experience. This is a punch to the face of both small developers who put out trash bag after trash bag and big studios, this is important, who put out the same bland, lazy games year after year. eye candy is what most of those titles will ever deliver. You know, with little to no substance whatsoever. As a matter of fact, I'm working on a Final Fantasy VII Remake review to celebrate its PC release on December 16th. Yes, the same day as Deedlit in Wonder Labyrinth. And I'm mentioning this because in that review I'll also discuss this matter, but at a slightly greater length. So make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. If all goes well, this video will be live really soon. And if you enjoyed this video, then smash that like button, give us a follow because your support helps us tremendously and I love making great quality content for you guys. So that was it for this video. Go out there, get out there, you know, if you love Metroidvanias, buy Deedlit in Wonder Labyrinth, you will not be disappointed. This was Belmont speaking to you, and I'll see you next time. Later.